If you can hear me, just let me know in the comments. Okay. All right, so we're just waiting to get started. When I live stream, I like a cold drink, I like a hot drink, and I like a good cigar. So we'll get started in a second. Got a lot to discuss. It's time to get bullish as fuck, as I used to say. There's an incredible amount happening, and I think a lot of people are completely mistaking how important this moment is because their friends on Twitter who have $200 of Bitcoin seem to think that there's a big conspiracy. Where am I? That's a secret. Apparently, Chris sent me a message saying no chat enabled, but I can see the comments, so I'm not sure what's going on here. Um, that's it, Mark. There's only three rules, and they keep fucking it up. You just got to buy Bitcoin, shut the fuck up, and you get fabulously wealthy. Yep, Chris, I'm going to cover that. Okay, let's get started. First thing I want everyone to do, if you are bullish as fuck, and only if you are bullish as fuck, I want you to copy the YouTube link to this stream and please share it because I was looking around on Twitter today, and there we go. What's up, Florida Bitcoin? Looking around on Twitter today, and everyone's very confused about how important this um, BlackRock filing is. And I've been away. I was in London for 6 weeks, and I just got back, and I thought, well, this is a good way to start up this series of live streams that we're going to be doing. So make sure you share the YouTube link and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. I was doing it across multiple platforms, but I just don't care anymore. We're just going to do this on YouTube. So YouTube is the platform. Make sure you subscribe. Okay, people are saying, okay, here we go. We're going to talk about this. BlackRock isn't bullish. We are going to get rid of the current corrupt system, not invite it in. Take BlackRock's out our mouths, out your mouth, in fact. Okay. So this is the energy that we've got from the people that don't understand how assets are financialized. Wondershare said it's laughable how obvious this is following a script. Absolutely not following a script. You should shut the fuck up. Hopefully that proves it wasn't following a script. So there's a couple things that I want to talk about, which I think are quite important, and then we can talk about whatever else you guys want to talk about. So the single most important thing that you've got to realize is we are entering a period where I'm gonna get the chat off the screen because there we go. We're entering a period where you are going to get your Bitcoin stolen if you don't pay attention to what's going to happen. A $1 million Bitcoin price is a $21 trillion market cap. And that market cap is just double, approximately double the market cap of gold. That's it. A $1 million market cap is a doubling of the market cap of gold. And the question you have to ask yourself is, how much better is gold to Bitcoin? It's not. It's probably 5 times worse, which means Bitcoin is 5 times better than gold for the functions that it plays, especially the supply constraints and everything else. So you guys are sitting there and you're getting super, either you're getting excited or you're getting worried. The people I worry about are the people who get worried. If you're worried about BlackRock coming into the system, you're probably going to be the type of person who, when BlackRock pumps the price to $1 million because they understand that $21 trillion is a bargain of a market cap for an asset with absolute finality of supply, you're probably going to be the first ones to sell because you want to go buy yourself a PlayStation or something like that. This is becoming a financialized asset at this point. This is extremely important. People are going to come into this market who we have not expected before. People are going to come into this market who are happy to pay you $1 million for your Bitcoin because they think you're stupid giving it away for $1 million. And yet, the $200 Bitcoin gang is shitting all over this news and basically saying this news is irrelevant. It is absolutely important for any asset to become a financial asset. Now, I'm not going to talk to those people who basically have got $1,000 to their name and want to take down a system. I have no desire to talk to you. Anything I talk about, the information I put out there is really for people who have assets or who want assets, who understand that this term that we like to call, that Andrew Tate made famous, the idea of the matrix, is real. And the idea that you are going to take down the quote unquote matrix with $200 of Bitcoin to your name and $1,000 of total net worth is laughable. These people are laughing at you, talking on Twitter about how you want to take down a system with $200 of Bitcoin to your name. So then everything I put out, everything I tweet about, everything I talk about is for people with assets. The book I'm writing is for people with assets because to me, those are the people who have something to protect. Those are the people who you have worked your entire life to be handed a measly sum of money for your Bitcoin or just completely miss the Bitcoin train. And then everything that you've worked for gets diluted down and you end up with nothing and your children end up back in the slave machine. That's who I focus on. The $200 net worth Bitcoin people, that's not my world. And this is extremely important. This BlackRock news is extremely important because it is now becoming a financialized asset, which means a couple different things that it means when you say an asset is becoming financialized. It means that institutions that couldn't hold it before will now be able to hold it. It means that the average person who has got $500,000, $1 million net worth will be able to call their broker, even better, log in online and press a button and buy it without the paranoia and the risks and the terror of dealing with what happens if I lose my Bitcoin. People don't understand how much of a fear that is. I know people who are multimillionaires who refuse to put money into Bitcoin because they are worried about it being stolen or them losing it. Pretty real concern, if you ask me. What do you guys think? And as they are worried about losing it, the net worth that they've built in the 20, 30, 40 years of business, or the inheritance that they received, that is now going to be completely washed away because they don't understand that they need to own Bitcoin because they're too afraid. That is all about to be taken away. More money is about to enter the Bitcoin space as a result of this ETF approval when it happens than the $200 to their name Bitcoin gang can write down. That's how much money is about to come into this space. So I want everyone to ignore the $1,000 net worth people and let them continue shit posting on Twitter and focus in on really what's going on here. At the end of the day, you guys know my opinion. If you've been following me for any amount of time, you guys know my opinion. If you don't have net worth, you don't have an opinion. That's the system we live in. Now, should the system change? Absolutely. Is it going to? I don't think so. Even when you look at this whole US China situation, how do you defeat the United States when the financiers of China are from the United States? Make it make sense. How do you defeat the United States when China's economy is basically printing money and then figuring out how to get it out of that printed money and into real money, which in this case, right now in the world, real money is US dollars? How do you do that? What happens when there is no other empire? What happens when the rising empire was funded by the status quo? What happens? And most importantly, who's running the empire? Nobody knows. Nobody knows who runs this empire. So these are very important things to think about before you get sucked into the drama of what's going on. So, why is this ETF important? And by the way, it will get approved. BlackRock is the signal. BlackRock is the signal. This will get approved. Whether it happens in 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, this will get approved. In fact, I'm saying right now, I put a 99% certainty on the fact that we have a spot Bitcoin ETF in the USA by the next halving. BlackRock is the signal this time round. And all of you guys are sitting there worried about BlackRock doing XYZ while BlackRock just continues to do XYZ. You think that they woke up last week and said, you know what we should do? We should probably file for a spot ETF. You think that they just woke up last week and said, hey, get some guys together and file for a Bitcoin spot ETF? This has been methodically planned. This has been systematically planned. You think this just came after FTX collapsed, after a Binance investigation? You think this just like coincidentally happened? If you think that there is any coincidence in the financial space, you are a moron, especially at this level. We're talking BlackRock now. We're not talking, you know, uh, some YouTuber talking about when to get into Bitcoin. This is BlackRock, right? We're not talking about me and the bullish as fuck gang talking about, oh, you gotta get into Bitcoin, you gotta get bullish as fuck, etc., etc. We're not talking about that anymore. This is BlackRock we're talking about. If you don't take this seriously, you will end up screwing your entire future over. And again, I will reiterate to them, giving you $1 million to steal your Bitcoin because they understand the finality of the asset is nothing. It's a $21 trillion market cap. It's double the value of gold. That's it. They will have no problems. And I guarantee you, the people that are shit posting the most right now will be the ones that sell it to them. So, what I want to do is help people understand, the people that are ready, the people that have assets, the people that have a future that they've worked for, understand why holding Bitcoin is extremely important and why holding it for the long term is extremely important and why you shouldn't see this as a trade. Too many people are seeing Bitcoin as a trade, and you will be screwed. Bitcoin is not a trade. Bitcoin is not a trade. This is the only time in human history that we have an asset that is finite, has a specific supply schedule. It's the only time in human history that we have this. It's the only time in human history. I always say to my friends who are Bitcoin detractors, if you can tell me exactly how much gold was dug out of the ground yesterday, I'll take 90% of my Bitcoin holdings and put them into gold again, because that's where I was. They can't, because it's impossible. Bitcoin, we can tell you every 10 minutes where how much Bitcoin came out, where it went. There's no other asset on earth that you can do that with. So let's get into some of the weeds of this. BlackRock, the reason why this is extremely important from a game theory perspective is that BlackRock, and by the way, everything I'm saying is actually most important for the people that, based on the worldwide, how economics works, what we would call poor people. It's most useful for poor people. But what do poor people do? Believe the $200 net worth Bitcoiners and talk about, oh, BlackRock's going to take all the Bitcoin and do a hard fork and all this other bullshit. It's only the rich people that listen. That's why they're rich. So if you're sitting there worrying about conspiracy theories with $200 of Bitcoin to your name, you're a loser. And it's okay. But you have to admit where you're at. You have to admit exactly what's going on. There are people with multi-millions of dollars of assets that are going to start chasing the asset that you currently own and the asset that you have known about for years before them. And all you've done is DCA'd instead of figuring out how to create a business, how to create an opportunity, getting another job, etc., and stacking more. If you've done that, that's great. But there are people shitposting on Twitter when they should actually be out there working so that you can stack more of this finite asset for your future, for your children, for your lineage. But nowadays, people don't worry about that. People don't think about their children. A sidebar. I actually think that if more people worried about their futures and more people worried about their families and having children, etc., Bitcoin would be adopted a lot faster than it is. But now our incentives are a bit messed up. So we're incentivized to, I don't know, carry flags and protest against flags and, all that stuff nowadays, rather than worrying about the real thing, which is one day I will have someone that I am responsible for. And the problem is, I only get one chance with Bitcoin. I get one chance with Bitcoin. I get one chance to acquire the Bitcoin because it's a finite supply asset. There will never be another opportunity to acquire the asset that we're talking about because it will be taken. It is finite. We have in my lifetime and even in my parents' lifetime and my grandparents' lifetime, there has not been a single asset that has a finality to it. Think about that. Name me one in the comments. Name me an asset that has finality to it. And I'm not talking finality because somebody chose not to make it, true finality to it. Can't do it. You can't do it. And yet everyone's worried about BlackRock coming in and like you got to think about Mona Lisa. That's an interesting one. Yeah. Mona Lisa is an interesting one. But does it mean that the Mona Lisa we couldn't make more of them? No. The artist died. The artist died. But that's a really good that's probably one of the closest examples that you could get to it. I'm glad you mentioned that. Do you think if the Louvre in Paris took down the Mona Lisa and put something else in place, the Mona Lisa would still have the value that it does? Right? Michelangelo's David as well. Basically, the things that have value over time, through space and time, are things where you cannot recreate them because outside of the control of anyone else, the creator has died. Whereas with Bitcoin, you've actually got a programmed finality of supply. There is never an asset that has had that. I don't care what anyone says about gold. I was in the gold space and they were talking about peak gold 10 years ago. It never came. It never came. Peak gold never came and it won't come because gold is a product of Mother Nature. So, BlackRock is extremely important because their track record for approving ETFs, I don't know if anyone's looked at this, their track records of approving ETFs, well, they've applied for 576 ETFs in their existence. 576. 576 ETFs in their existence. They've got 575 approved. There was one denial, and in that denial, the SEC denied every single other ETF in the industry. This is happening, and it was this. It's pretty much 100% success, Kevin. I wouldn't look at it as anything else. By the way, anyone who's new, please subscribe to the channel and take the YouTube link and share it around so we get more people into this live stream. I'd appreciate that. Thank you. 100% success rate in approvals. Their 194B, which they filed, laid out the secret as to how they're going to get this approved. The SEC's biggest fear around approving a spot Bitcoin ETF has been that there is a lack of market transparency and there can be manipulation in markets. So what they've done is they've set up a what's called a surveillance sharing agreement with the Nasdaq. The Nasdaq, which is a trusted entity by the SEC, you can't find anyone more trusted by the SEC than the Nasdaq. It's impossible. The only other person more trusted by the SEC than the Nasdaq is going to be BlackRock. So they've got the Nasdaq in, and they've said we're gonna share information with you so you can clearly see what data is coming through regarding trades in this fund immediately, and therefore the SEC can save their face and say, right, this ticks all of our boxes. Now the good news is that if the SEC accepts this provision, which I believe they will, because again, BlackRock has a 100% success rate in approving ETFs. If the SEC accepts this provision, it completely opens up the doors for everyone else. Of course, the Nasdaq will be thanking BlackRock because now the Nasdaq will be used by everyone. That's the provision. That's where BlackRock got smart. Unlike Grayscale and unlike GBTC, BlackRock got really smart. They figured it out. Of course, it's BlackRock, and I'm sure they had a couple of conversations to figure out what the temperature of hearing another Bitcoin ETF application would be like based on the changes that were made. And of course, they've now applied for it, which, and I give a 99% certainty that there will be a spot Bitcoin ETF in the USA by the next halving at this point. Again, they are the signal. So this starts a whole chain of events in corporate offices. And by the way, this has not been happening for like 2 weeks. right? It's not like a 2 week thing that just happened and suddenly BlackRock decided to file for an ETF. This starts the whole game theory part of it in Wall Street. This starts Fidelity thinking. What do we do? And again, today there's rumors of Fidelity filing for a spot ETF too. It would be a good move because they can't be the only one. This will open up the floodgates. And Fidelity know that if they don't jump on board, not only will the market have a BlackRock one, but also GBTC, because GBTC will be converted once the correct provisions are found. And Fidelity is going to jump on board. Now, Fidelity will jump on board, and guess who then comes on board? I believe Vanguard is after Fidelity. It will go BlackRock, GBTC, Fidelity, Vanguard. Done. Game over. Game over. This is extremely, extremely important. And especially for people who understand legacy assets, it's extremely important to pay attention to what's going on here. The game theory element of it, to me, is the most interesting part because the game theory element of it tells you, okay, well, if BlackRock attracts, you know, billions of dollars within the first week into the fund, and then Fidelity comes along and attracts billions of dollars, and then GBTC gets converted, it's already billions of dollars. These people start making money from selling these ETFs. There are fund managers and salespeople standing around waiting, and they can't sell Bitcoin right now because you have to worry about who's going to custody it. You have to worry about who's going to hold it. You have to worry about all these things. So you can't just go to a high net worth client and say, hey, you should buy Bitcoin, right? Because the first question they're going to ask is, firstly, if they're an institutional client, can this work based on the mandate that we have? And secondly, who's going to look after this thing for me? I don't want to lose it. So now this takes care of that. Every company, every major asset manager in the world, mainly in the American financial markets, that's the only ones that really matter at this point, are going to be jumping on board and selling Bitcoin. Because what have we had in the last year? In this last bear market, look at the huge, amazing things that have happened. FTX has been wound down. Binance is on the chopping block. NFTs have collapsed. All of this shit has gone away. More importantly, the institutional clients finally get it that all of that was bullshit. So now institutional clients are looking for a way in. And if you're sitting there and you've got $1 million in the stock market, or you've got, $1 million in real estate, or $5 million in real estate, and you haven't allocated a single penny to Bitcoin, you are going straight back to where you started. If you don't understand that this is the signal for you, if you were waiting last time and you ignored everyone, and now you're sitting there going, oh, uh, who knows, this can't be that serious. Now this is the signal for you. This is the bat sign in the air. This is the Bitcoin sign in the air. This is the moment where you decide to not be a moron for the rest of your life, and you actually decide to allocate into Bitcoin. This is the moment right now. And I'm going to answer this question as well. We're going to talk about price in a second. If you don't understand why the American markets are the single most important financial markets in the world, I cannot help you at this point. Other financial markets are absolutely irrelevant. The EU had to put in MiFID rules just to keep money from flying out of the EU. You can buy American ETFs as long as they're wrappered and sold on the EU stock market. That's how that's how scared they are of American capital markets. American capital markets are the apex predator of worldwide capital markets. If you don't understand that, I can't help you with that. That's already the case. You should already understand that. It is your responsibility to figure out. Go Google it. Go chat GPT it. Now you got chat GPT to figure out the stuff. You don't even have to do much work. So the game theory is starting. BlackRock is the signal, 576 applications for ETFs, 575 approvals. And people are still sitting there going, you know what, I'm just gonna not put any money into Bitcoin because it's not, safe yet. The other part that makes this interesting for me, and what I was talking about on Clubhouse today for a second, was that corporations and institutions and decision makers, it becomes extremely easy for them to now invest in Bitcoin when they have an ETF. Because let's talk about the actual decision making process that had to happen before. You had to sit there and go, okay, I need to convince my board. So then you need to convince the board. Then you sit there and go through a due diligence process just for the purpose of we need to get into Bitcoin. So once you've been through that due diligence process, now you got to get legal in, and legal has to come in and say, can we do this with the current mandate that we have, and how are we going to store it, and how are we going to secure it, and what are the security parameters, et cetera, et cetera. Then you got to get the accounting department in to figure out how you're going to account for it. This is a 12 to 18 month process if you are a large institution. This has all just been eradicated because Bitcoin has certain tax in the US, certain tax requirements, et cetera, that are not favorable to big institutions, but they can invest in ETFs. That's easy. They can invest in ETFs. In fact, I would gamble that the reason why the tax rules and the accounting rules has not changed is because they want to centralize ownership into an ETF or some way controlled within the current financial systems. I would argue that that's the reason why the accounting rules have not been changed for Bitcoin and the classification. So it becomes you've just taken a 12 to 18 month journey for an institution to decide whether we want to get into Bitcoin or not, and reduced it down to a 3 to 6 month due diligence process of do we get into Bitcoin with our corporate assets? Yes, cool. Send it to BlackRock, get it into the ETF. Done. No thinking required. Which legal department is not going to approve sending money to BlackRock when most of the money came from BlackRock anyway? So, this is extremely important for corporate decision makers. And people are sitting around. See, Matthias, I'm going to answer this stupidity as well. Matthias, in fact, I want you to tell me exactly how they manipulated the gold price with the ETF. Tell me that in the comments, please. Please lay out for me exactly how that happened. I'm going to come back to that. So now you got corporate decision makers that it's just become easy for. Now think about this one. What about family offices? What about people with $5 to $10 million net worths whose children have been telling them, you need to get into Bitcoin, you need to get into Bitcoin, you need to get into Bitcoin? They've been ignoring them because they're like, I don't know how this Bitcoin bullshit works. Now those same kids can go to their parents and say, hey, that nest egg that we've got, we need to allocate into Bitcoin, and all you got to do is call your broker account, call your broker up, and make the allocation. This is opening up a flood of capital that everyone is ignoring. This is the single most important thing to happen for Bitcoin since Bitcoin was incepted. Because this is going to explode adoption. Now, you might say it's not real adoption because they're not actually utilizing the Bitcoin and buying coffees with it. Get fucked. I'm talking about financial markets, financial assets. I'm talking about people understanding that they need to own Bitcoin and they can finally do it in a safe way that they can trust, it's familiar, etc., etc. That's what I'm talking about. The people who are the early adopters and understand, hey, one day maybe I can buy a coffee with Bitcoin, they already own the Bitcoin. I'm talking about the people who have $2 million in real estate that haven't bothered owning Bitcoin because it's just perceived as too risky. That is the market. These people have net worth to protect. These people have worked 35 years, like my parents, 35 years of their life to build a property portfolio for me and my brother that is about to be eradicated. Their wealth has been sucked away. In fact, after this, you should go watch a video I did on my channel called How to Stay Poor, Buy Real Estate, Stocks, and Gold. It was maybe like 2 months ago. Yeah, Wondershare said number one Hyde Park, the most prestigious address in London, in the city of London, was up for sale a couple years ago, accepted Bitcoin. Of course, take this trash. Give me some Bitcoin. Bitcoin is much more valuable than number one Hyde Park in London. So you've got to understand that this is extremely important. Everyone who's got $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, $20 million, $30 million net worth is about to come into this race. And you've been sitting there, you've been spent the whole bear market shit posting on Twitter and not figuring out how to acquire more of the asset. And those people who are sitting there with $1 million in net worth or $5 million in net worth, et cetera, this is your signal. This is the moment where you shine. Because if you already have assets, you already have a net worth, you can take 10% of that, 20% of that, 30% of that, right? I understand once you've got money, once you've got a significant amount of money, you cannot put 100% of your net worth into Bitcoin. Most of the people that have 100% of their net worth in Bitcoin, I don't have 100% of my net worth in Bitcoin. Most of the people that do had, their money came from Bitcoin. I'm talking about people who have real estate, stocks, etc., etc. You need an allocation in Bitcoin because this is the signal. BlackRock filing for an ETF is the signal. Corporations can go for this, family offices can go for this, sovereign wealth funds can go for this. Which sovereign wealth fund is going to cause a problem about sending money to BlackRock? None. No committee is going to cause a problem with. Oh, and then think about it. BlackRock sends out a prospectus every single year, right? So they're going to talk to their people, and the people's first question is, what's the best performing fund of the last year? Bitcoin. What do you think happens at that point? Bitcoin was and people are stupid. They'll look at what happened last year and assume that it's going to happen this year. So Bitcoin was the best performing thing last year, so it has to be the best performing thing next year. This is why the ETF is important. You are unlocking an army of salespeople that are every day their bread and butter, their life, whether their wife is happy with them or not, whether their children get to eat or not, depends on whether they sell financial products to their clients. And they're about to be unleashed into this market with a proper ETF coming into place. That's how important this is. That's how big this is. And if you're sitting there with a $5 million real estate portfolio thinking, hey, I don't really need to learn about this Bitcoin thing. I'm good. I don't really want to take the risk. I don't really want to do this, that, and the other. Good. You're going to lose everything. Because if you price your real estate in the amount of debasement that has happened, the value of your real estate should technically be 85% higher than what it is right now to match the amount of debasement that's happened since 2008. But you don't think about that because you got dollars in the bank. You're like a little monkey, right? They give you dollars and you're happy. Hey, don't worry about the grand scheme. Don't worry about the cage that you're in. Have a banana. That's what it is. Don't worry about the amount of money we're printing. Have a couple dollars. And that's why they'll give you $1 million to steal your Bitcoin because they know that that's the escape hatch for institutional and federal funds. That's the escape hatch. The escape hatch is print as much of US dollars as we want, pump it, get into Bitcoin, and that's the escape route to the next American renaissance. Chris, I don't have hope. Chris said, how much sense will this knock into real estate investors? I don't know. Real estate investors are there's some smart real estate investors, right? But there are real estate investors who are so stuck in their ways because property is the only thing they know. They don't want to take any risks with anything else, etc., etc. And they will struggle. They're older. They've been doing this thing for so long. And I understand it's risky. If you've been doing something for so long that's just worked, you got millions in the bank, everything's good, your children are happy, your wife's happy, no one's really, causing you any problems, the taxes are good, etc., etc. Why do I want to look at Bitcoin? Why do I want to? I can't be bothered. My life's good right now. It ain't about right now. Here's the thing that I want to implore to people who are in that position. You have spent your entire life building a legacy, and that legacy will be stripped away from you continuously. They'll exchange it for dollars and give you a few dollars, and then they'll outprint the dollars that they give you, and that's a real problem. And then when things get too hot, they'll issue a bunch of licenses to build more property, and when that happens, it's just like you don't have any control of your wealth. You've spent 20 to 30 years building a legacy. You don't have any control over it. All you're waiting for is for someone to say, hey, print money, or for someone to say, hey, make sure we don't build too many buildings. That's not the life that you want. That's not the life that you worked hard for. That's not the life that you spent 25, 35 years building a property portfolio for, or building a stock market portfolio for. What are you going to do when your children look at you and say, hey, you had the opportunity to buy some of that Bitcoin at $30,000 a coin, and now because you chose not to, I have to buy it at $3 million a coin? Just imagine that. That is the message that I'm here to spread. The people that have got $200 net worths in Bitcoin, cool. I'm sure, hopefully some of this stuff makes sense to you. I don't care. That's not my world. That's not the people that I'm mainly focused on. I'm sure this is going to be a spillover effect, and that's fine. I'm worried about people that actually understand finance, understand assets, and they're not taking this seriously. The first thing that happened when I read the BlackRock ETF application was I rang my best friend and I rang my parents and told them that they're coming for our Bitcoin. They are coming to steal our Bitcoin, and they're going to give us hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars for it, because they understand that this is how the system works. Who do you think the government's going to go to when the government says we need to put Bitcoin on the treasury? Who do you think they're going to go to? You think all of this is being set up because 2 weeks ago someone woke up and said we need a Bitcoin spot ETF? We're BlackRock. These are corporations that are moving the entire earth. These are corporations that sent their executives to Ukraine while Russia is apparently dropping bombs on the Ukraine. How do you think they guaranteed their safety? We're talking about forces that are extremely big. And I'm not here to argue with no force. I'm not here to argue with anyone. I understand how financial markets work. I understand that 95% of people will stay asleep. I understand that 95% of people are born to be sheep. I understand that. I'm just here to speak to the 5% wherever they may be. That's it. That's all I want to talk to. The 5% wherever they may be. Which is why I say, please share this YouTube link. Please subscribe to the channel. Please go to the website, britishhuddle.com, and sign up to get my book when it comes out on launch. So, there's a few other things that I want to talk about. I want to make sure we talk about them before we just continue free balling. I think that not only is this the single most important event for Bitcoin since Bitcoin was discovered and released. I think that Wall Street will control somewhere around 8 million Bitcoin out of the 21 million within the next decade. I was having this debate with my friend American Huddle on Clubhouse, and he said he thinks about 5 million. I said 5 million is too small, right? You got Grayscale that's got 600,000-700,000. You got Fidelity got 600,000-700,000. BlackRock will attract a ton of capital. There's MicroStrategy that own 150,000 or whatever it is. 2 or 3 million is small. It's small numbers. And here's the thing. Now that you got an ETF, you know what this opens up for a lot of people that understand how finance works? I thought this was going to happen differently, but this is a real easy shortcut for making this happen. If you are someone who wants to own Bitcoin and you understand finance and capital and you want to take a lending product against your Bitcoin, the easiest way to do it will be through an ETF because everyone already knows how it works. There's already stock loan services out there. If I've got $1 million of QQQ, I can go and borrow 500,000 against that in 2 days with no issues. Custody becomes challenging with an ETF, or rather with cold storage. If I want to borrow against my Bitcoin that's in cold storage, custody is a challenge because how does the company know? Like, this is what everyone's trying to figure out right now. Here's the shortcut. You want to borrow against your Bitcoin. Great. Put your Bitcoin into a Bitcoin registered ETF. We'll allocate you the shares. This is exactly what Chamath did with his Bitcoin. He gave it to Grayscale, and he received GBTC shares for it. That's exactly what he did. That's how Grayscale, in fact, one of the founding investors of Grayscale and GBTC was Chamath. Now, they'll say, take your Bitcoin, you got, whatever it is. You got 1,000 Bitcoin, you got 5,000, whatever it is. You got 100 Bitcoin, whatever. Put it into the ETF. There's no fees for putting it into the ETF. And we will give you the shares to represent that Bitcoin. And then you can start borrowing against the shares. Easy. Easy. This has all been done before. This is not new. This is the systems are already set up for this. None of this is new. What a fantastic way to have a facility against your Bitcoin. Right? You got the number one capital markets in the world, most proven capital markets in the world. You take your Bitcoin, you put it into the ETF. You got no chance of losing it now. All the responsibilities on their side, and you get to borrow against it at what, 2% rates, 3% rates, 4% rates. You don't think corporations are going to take advantage of that? You don't think sovereign wealth funds are going to take advantage of that? You don't think people are going to do that? If you don't think that that's a possibility, you are a $200 net worth Bitcoiner, and your opinion is irrelevant. This is how financial markets work. This is why when a family office, et cetera, wants to, own real estate, they'll do it through a real estate investment trust, because the financing options around a real estate investment trust or those specific vehicles are better. This is the single most important event for Bitcoin adoption since Bitcoin came out. You're really not seeing the spider's web of what's about to happen here. Now, let's talk about a few of the conspiracy theories. This is the dumbest shit I've ever seen in my life. I'm actually going to bring up my Twitter because I put it up there. Okay. By the way, I want everyone, whatever conspiracy theories you've heard about this ETF from BlackRock, I want you to put it in the comments. I'm gonna go through each and every single one of them and debunk the stupidity. Number one, BlackRock will fork Bitcoin. Do we even need to talk about this? The network effects of Bitcoin are too strong at this point. More importantly, by the time they actually control enough Bitcoin to do that, And to actually for it to even possibly make any sense, the price of Bitcoin will be so high that the game theory will take over again. People will just focus back on Bitcoin. Right, so that's out the way. Number two, BlackRock will price control and manipulate the Bitcoin price. How many people think that can happen? How many people are using GLD as an example to talk about that? BlackRock's just going to manipulate the price. I have empathy for people who have been screwed over in life at every step of the way and now believe that anything that happens is immediately bad. Do I think that BlackRock is going to try and figure out how to use a Bitcoin ETF to their advantage? Of course. That's the financial markets. They'll push the boundaries. But how you manipulate the price of an underlying commodity is not through an ETF. You do it through the futures markets. And we've had futures markets for years in Bitcoin. You don't manipulate it through an ETF that has to immediately, as soon as capital comes in, go and buy some Bitcoin that day or sell some Bitcoin that day if there are sell orders coming in. You don't do it through that. You might be able to manipulate it by a few dollars, but you're not going to be able to manipulate it by 20% and hold it there for a year and a half. That's what the futures markets are for. And we've had futures markets. The beautiful thing about Bitcoin is it's the same market everywhere in the world at the exact same time, open 24/7, no matter what. That's what's beautiful. That is what's beautiful. Because what that means is if there is anything out of place in the ETF, which allows for a spread to be created, then that spread will be filled by Asia before the US even wakes up. The second the US closes, Asia will wake up. In fact, I predict that within the next 5 to 10 years, as these Bitcoin ETFs come out, there will be 24-hour Bitcoin desks in all of these big banks because you can't afford to close it down. 24-hour banks, 24-hour desks, trading desks for all of these things. Let's see what other conspiracy theories that people came out with. One person said that BlackRock filed for the ETF to deliberately get rejected and discourage anyone else from trying. You are a moron if you think that. You are a moron if you think that. They've got 576 applications and 575 approvals. One denial. That was the whole industry being denied. You are silly. Um, let's see. BlackRock's going to buy all the Bitcoin. How are you going to do that when I have mine? How are you going to do that? BlackRock's going to buy all the Bitcoin. How are you going to do that? They'll certainly try, but they'll have to pay you for it. They'll have to pay you for it, and then it's your choice. I believe in capital markets. Like, I believe in freedom and capitalism, which is why I say, all of this NFT bullshit. If you think there's value in NFTs, that's great. Do it on top of Bitcoin. Do it with ordinals, do it whatever, but build it on top of Bitcoin. I don't think anyone should. Do I think ordinals are smart? No, I think it's stupid. But do I think people should absolutely try different things? Absolutely. That's what capitalism is. You get to try and fail or succeed. You get to try and fail or succeed. Wondershare just said something interesting. Hong Kong regulators are pressuring banks to accept it, to adopt it. Makes sense because the only way that Hong Kong has been able to stay relevant to China is the Chinese money can go to Hong Kong and can be pegged out into the US dollar and then it's out the system. Makes complete sense to me. The only people that are not seeing this stuff are people, it's really weird. The people that are not seeing this are like the really broke Bitcoiners or the extremely wealthy legacy asset holders. And while all of this is happening, Bitcoin is a finite asset. All of this demand coming down the pipeline, and Bitcoin is a finite asset. Just imagine that. All of this demand coming. There are 1.8 million roughly Bitcoin on exchanges. How quickly can that be sucked up? How quickly can that be sucked up? It's crazy. So we got the conspiracy theories. Any other ones over here? Let's have a look. U.S. regulations make self custody illegal. Can only hold through an ETF. The uh, exchanger for the government. Yeah, that's a possibility. It's got like a 0.5% chance, but that's a possibility. Um, I've not played with Swan's Nakamoto profile website or portfolio tools yet. Dennis said, "Will there be options available on this ETF?" Yes, if it's an ETF, there'll be options. Robert said, "What's the best way to play this?" Okay, talk about making money now. Let's talk about making money now. There's a couple different ways to play this. Either, of course, you just buy the Bitcoin. Secondly, as these provisions, now they've filed their 194B, every other ETF application will follow the pathway as long as the SEC approves the provision that BlackRock has created. So, there's another way that you can do this is to buy the GBTC. Because if you buy the GBTC, you're buying Bitcoin at a discount right now. I think the discount is like 36% at this point. GBTC went up 13% on Friday, while Bitcoin went up 3% on Friday. And the reason for that is people are waking up to the fact that an ETF is coming and there is an opportunity there. And again, just like I said, as soon as there's an opportunity, the gap will be filled. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a GBTC zero discount, zero premium by the end of this year. Will not be surprised at all. So you can make a, you know, 30-40% extra just by owning GBTC instead of buying the Bitcoin directly. But the best way to play this is to own the Bitcoin directly, especially if you don't already have some Bitcoin. Yeah, you might want to do a split in the portfolio if you understand. And again, I don't want to trigger the $10 a month DCA gang or the $200 Bitcoin net worthers that shitpost on Twitter. But if you actually want to make some money and you have experience in dealing with financial markets, GBTC gives you a 35-36% discount to the price of Bitcoin. If you understand what you're doing and you understand what you're holding, etc., it may be the right option. Or just go buy the Bitcoin. Just follow the three rules. Guys, what are the three rules? Put the three rules in the comments. There's only three rules to Bitcoin. What are they? Chris said, I should buy GBTC, borrow against it to buy more Bitcoin. See, now you're talking fancy. I can't tell you to go do some exciting leverage things like that. There you go. Abs got it. Buy Bitcoin. Step number one, buy Bitcoin. Step number two, shut the fuck up. Step number three, you get fabulously wealthy. Kevin got it too. I've been saying this so when did I jump on Twitter? I think it was 2020. Maybe the end of 2020 or 2021, something like that. I've been saying it since then. There's only three rules. You buy Bitcoin, shut the fuck up, you get fabulously wealthy. And then there's people like Chris that want to do this fancy stuff. The only problem with this is you don't know the volatility on the asset, and therefore you may be forced into a margin call in that scenario. It would be better. So what I did and what I did with my parents' property portfolio is got them to borrow against their property portfolio in 2020 and buy Bitcoin with the money that they borrowed from the property portfolio. Why is that good? Or it's better than this option is because the value of the properties is not going to go up and down like the value of Bitcoin. So it creates some stability. Plus, you get to borrow it at, it was 2% or whatever at the time. Kevin, you got to say it right. It's fabulously wealthy. Rich is just like one of those things that everyone wants to be because they see, it on Instagram. I'm talking about wealth. I'm talking about the type of wealth. That's what I like. I am working so that my kids don't need to work on anything that they don't want to work on. That's what I'm working for. That's the type of community I want. This is why I ignore the $200 net worthers. I don't care. I don't give a shit. Even if, put it like, this is the way I think about it. When they shit post, it's like, I'm listening and I'm reading shit posts from people where if Bitcoin went to $10 million a coin tomorrow, you would still have a lower net worth than me in both Bitcoin terms and dollar terms, whichever way you fancy playing the game today. So I don't need to listen to you. I want to listen to people that actually are doing it correctly, acquiring as much Bitcoin as possible, figuring out the fact that their legacy depends on it. That's what's important. So, couple of other different, just a couple other last things I want to point out, and then maybe if you guys want to come on the stream, we'll do that. The Matrix, as Andrew Tate has popularized, is real. I'm not here telling you the Matrix isn't real. I'm here to tell you that you got to get rich in order to even have an opinion. I don't care how many Andrew Tate videos you watch. I don't care how many times you tweet in support of Andrew Tate. I like the guy too. I like what he says too. I believe what he says too about the system because I've seen it with my own eyes because I got rich enough to have an opinion and therefore I got to see this shit. I know how it works. But you're not going to defeat it by having $200 of Bitcoin and sitting there shit posting on Twitter all day. Right? That's not how it works. You need to understand you got to get wealthy. You got to get wealthy so that your kids don't have to work. If you're not thinking about that, I don't want to know. If you're not thinking about how you are creating and making choices today that will impact your children's children because this is a finite asset, I don't want to know. This is what's important. You got to get wealthy. You got to get seriously wealthy. It's very, very important. You're not going to sit there trying to beat the matrix with $200 of Bitcoin. It's not going to happen. You're still going to be flipping burgers, as my American Bitcoin friends like to say. We don't really say that in the UK. Or working at McDonald's or stacking shelves in Tesco's. That's like Walmart. So there's many different ways to play this. I understand how the matrix works. I understand how to take advantage of the matrix. So I still have a stock portfolio. I still have other ways of investing and taking advantage of Bitcoin. Mining stocks are one of them. Investing and figuring out how to buy put options when you can see clearly that a market cycle is about to turn over the long term is another one. Buying long call options on mining stocks is another one, etc., etc. There's lots of different buying GBTC versus Bitcoin, but I will always say the majority of my portfolio is in Bitcoin in cold storage, secured in a way where I would need to fly to 3 countries in order to move it. This is why I love Chris. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. Absolutely. Completely love that quote and agree with it completely. If you're not thinking like that, why are you around me? I don't get it. I don't want to talk to these people. I don't want to talk to these people that want Bitcoin to go to $1 million a coin so they can finally move to El Salvador. Who gives a shit? I don't care about that. I already said I'm not going to El Salvador until they put a Marriott or a Four Seasons there. No knock on El Salvador. I love what the president is doing. It's beautiful. progress that the country has made overall. But what are we? Why are we getting distracted by this stupid shit? Especially if you've got assets. Yeah, Grub7 made a good point. Buy the asset, not the players. Majority of my portfolio is in the underlying assets, stored in a way where, like, if you told me today, move your Bitcoin, I can't. I need to get up from here, fly to another continent, land in the major city in that continent, do what I need to do, fly to another city in that continent, do what I need to do, then have a conversation, and then I can move my Bitcoin. That's how much bullshit I have to go through. And I wanted to leave it like that. And also, we'll talk about one thing actually. Jurisdictional arbitrage is extremely important in the systems that we live in today. Give me 1 second. Jurisdictional arbitrage is extremely important in the system that we live in today. My Bitcoin is owned by an entity in a different jurisdiction to the continent, let alone the country that it's held in. It is Jurisdictional arbitrage is extremely important. And people are not thinking about it. And then you got people in America that say, "Oh, but I can't do jurisdictional arbitrage." Anyone can do jurisdictional arbitrage. It's how much you want to do it or not. If you live in California, get that Bitcoin stored in a safety deposit box or several safety deposit boxes in states that are completely opposite to your state. So if you're in Florida, go get a safe deposit box in California. If you're in California, go get a safe deposit box in Texas. If you're in Texas, put one in Florida and put one in California. There is always a jurisdictional arbitrage that you can play. Do the research, find the states, find the legislation that allows you. Like for example, Wyoming, right? Wyoming has a great LLC legislature. You can go and put your assets in a Wyoming LLC or a safe deposit box owned by a Wyoming LLC in Wyoming, and almost no one can touch it, let alone find it. This is all the shit that you should be thinking about. Jurisdictional arbitrage is extremely, extremely important. But the problem is, the people that think least about jurisdictional arbitrage are the people with the assets, because the governments in the UK or the US have made you feel very, very comfortable until they want it. They make you feel very, very comfortable until they actually want it. And once they want it, they'll come get it. I keep mentioning his name, but look at Andrew Tate. Once they wanted him, they found any way to go, any way to get him locked up. They locked him up with no charges filed. Think about that. They locked him up with no charges filed. Now, I don't know what he did, where he did it, how he did it, whether it's true, whether it's legal or not. I just don't think should be able to lock someone up without charges being filed, without a jury. Maybe that's just me. I'm old fashioned. I grew up in the UK. Maybe I just believe in justice in a different way. But you have to take part in jurisdictional arbitrage wherever you're at. Now, with the BlackRock ETF, it's going to become even harder, but you still can, because you can absolutely open up an LLC, have a broker account in the name of the LLC, and have the ETF owned by the LLC. Think about jurisdictional arbitrage. This happens all the time. And especially if people that are in real estate, I'm sure everyone's comfortable with, owning a different property in a different LLC, etc., etc. This is common practice. You can do the same thing with your Bitcoin. You can go put a portion of your Bitcoin over here owned by this LLC, a portion of your Bitcoin over there owned by that LLC. It's all cheap to do in the US and around the world. It's pretty cheap to do. So figure it out. I fundamentally think, hold on a second. I fundamentally think that they will steal your Bitcoin, and they will do it through this ETF, and they'll steal it by making you happy by giving you $1 million. That's how I think they're going to steal it. And you need to get your shit together, because if you own real estate and you own stocks, they've already stolen your wealth. Go watch that video, How to Stay Poor, Own Stocks, Gold, Real Estate, etc., etc. It's on my channel. Go watch it. If you want to join the conversation, there's one other thing I'm going to talk about, but I've put the link in there. If you would like to come on to the live stream and have a live conversation, you can go and do that. If not, it's completely okay. But the last thing that I had planned to talk about is a conversation that I had with a friend of mine over cigars yesterday. And that is the idea of fear versus doubt. A lot of people are sitting there and they're confusing these two things. They're doubting something and thinking they're scared, or they're scared of something and thinking it's doubt. One paralyzes you, the other sharpens you. Fear sharpens you, doubt paralyzes you. If you are living a life where you are not wealthy, you're not rich, you're not a millionaire, you're not able to just get up and move around the world when they tell you got to sit in your house when there is, you know, a flu going around with a 99.9999997% survival rate, you are the idiot, not them. You are the idiot if you don't have the freedom to do that. Talking, and whether you do it or not is completely different, but don't you think it's wise to have the freedom to do it? Don't you think it's wise to wait until they say you can't go, you can't leave the country, others will fine you $7,000, and stick your middle finger up at them and say I'm leaving anyway? Don't you think it's wise to have that choice? That's what I wanted to build for my life, and that's what I did. I feel happy doing that. I feel happy that I have the freedom that the people that I love and care about, within any second of any day, if someone called me and said I'm in trouble, I'll be able to help them. I think that's really good. I think that's what I'm here on this earth to do. I think that's what everyone should be doing. So, fear versus doubt is extremely, extremely important. Know when you are experiencing fear and know when you are experiencing doubt. So many people are experiencing fear, receiving it and internalizing it as doubt, and then taking no action. If you are scared of Bitcoin because you think you might lose it, that's completely different to doubting Bitcoin. Both of these can be overcome. Do not allow yourself to be paralyzed by the doubt. Take the fear, internalize it, let it sharpen you, and figure it out. You can figure this out. You have figured it out for the rest of your life. You spent 25 to 35 years building a portfolio of assets that other people could only dream of having. You can do this and you can figure this out. That's my last message. Now, any comments or questions, or if anyone wants to come join the live stream, you got the link in the chat. I think that's very important. I'm gonna talk for a few more minutes if no one wants to come join the live stream, and then I'm gonna call it a day. Oh, here we go. Isaac,
Hey,
what's up, brother?
I'm cool, bro. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
What?
I've never joined a live stream before. It's all good. I didn't expect you to pick up with your cigar.
So,
All good.
how are you
Yes.
finding what I'm saying? Any questions?
Yeah. Questions. A few questions. I think it's a very insightful, very different to what I'm thinking. But here's my thinking. With the ETF, the BlackRock ETF, doesn't an ETF track the underlying asset, and therefore does it necessarily affect the asset, or doesn't the asset affect the ETF? So a simple example, let's say you've got the S&P ETF, right? It's the underlying shares that move, and the ETF kind of mirrors that, isn't it? So how do you see what I'm saying? So what I'm thinking in my mind is, how does the Bitcoin ETF influence the Bitcoin price? Doesn't the Bitcoin price work independently? An ETF just reflects that.
So this is where most people get confused, right?
Yeah.
the The way the ETF works is, let's say I put $1 million into the ETF tomorrow. they
Yes.
now have to go and acquire $1 million of Bitcoin to balance out my investment, and they have to custody $1 million more of Bitcoin. Let's say I sell
Ah,
a
okay.
million dollars of Bitcoin of my ETF. They now
Yes.
need to go and sell that $1 million of Bitcoin in the market, and they have to do it on a daily basis. The problem with GBTC is they're having to do it on a 6 month basis. And the problem with that is that's why you're getting the premium and the discount on
Okay.
GBTC, whereas that gets eradicated with an ETF.
Oh, perfect. So that means that gives further uh, um, acceleration or impetus for money to flow from the ETF into Bitcoin itself. You're saying they need to actually hold the assets. If a million goes in, they need to hold $1 million worth of Bitcoin.
Yes.
Oh, okay, that's
and
pretty
they're fully
significant.
and they're fully regulated to do this, and this is why people are not understanding what the hell is going on here. Like, this is very, very big. I think in the first day of trading you could get more than $2 billion into this ETF.
Yes, I definitely agree with you in terms of there's a lot of smart money waiting for a more regulated structure to put money in. Because the interesting thing is, although the funds themselves don't want to touch it, you find the individuals that work there actually own Bitcoin and cryptos. You know what I mean? So I think it's more a matter of time before a formal structure like this comes into play.
Yeah, it's always been a matter of time, and now it's
Mm,
finally, it's finally up. I'm just going to bring Chris into the conversation as well.
mm.
What's
Yeah,
up,
cool.
Chris?
What's going on, brother? Yo, I just wanted to say, yo, you did a great job breaking down, and explaining exactly how important this is. So I appreciate you. Just want to hop on here and say thank you for, dropping them
Mm.
gems. And you were killing me with the with the $200 $200 Bitcoin gang. You kill me with that. That's so funny. But you're
I
absolutely
just
right.
don't care about these people anymore. They like their net worth is less than that tie you're wearing. That
That,
tie
that
is probably $200 or more. Knowing
you
you,
know, but I just appreciate the info, man, and I'm glad that you're hopping on and educating people. So I do have a question
Mm.
though. How soon? You said you think by 2024, because we have the halvening, we have everything that will probably be finalized by 2024. How soon do you think it will start to have an impact on price once this gets passed?
it will
It's not
start to
if
have
it
an
gets
im-
passed.
it will
Once it
start
gets
to
passed.
have an impact on it will start to have an impact on price as the SEC, you know, either comments on it or BlackRock comments on it. Now, I don't think they will because BlackRock are too professional to do that. So I think the price will continue, and then the day of approval, I think things are going to change.
Mm.
And
Okay.
the day of approval, and then the day of trading, I think that's when the spread is going to happen. And by the way, this could happen a lot sooner if they don't have any issues with it. Let's say the SEC just goes, you know what, we don't need any comments on this because we completely understand what's going on here. They could fast track this thing. This could be a 6 to 8 month wait. But I'm just putting April 2020, like before the halving, just to allow some latitude and get everyone to calm down a little bit.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to also let you guys know, when is your book coming out again?
September.
September. Okay. I have a new book that's dropping as well. Bitcoin Dad, Fiat Dad. I don't know if you guys saw that, but pre-orders are actually out now. So, I
Where do
look
they
forward
go? Where do they go to do that?
Bitcoin Dad, FiatDad.com if you guys are interested in that. It's going to be pretty much my perspective as a dad, and what British was talking about. It's not about us. It's about our kids and our kids' kids, and it's about the generational wealth that you should be worried about. You shouldn't be worried about yourself, because most of us are mid-age, right? And unfortunately, we're not going to be living too much longer the way.
Hey, speak for yourself. My skin's looking good.
Hey, we're looking good, but just the way everything is, we're not living as long as we used to live, unfortunately. But just think about your kids, and that's just about it, bro. Thank you for hopping on and sharing your wisdom and sharing all that insight about
Of
what's really.
course. Now, before you go, why are you wearing a tie? What's going on?
Oh no, I just wanted to, I had a meeting today. I just wanted to look good. I've been dressing up. I've been having some business meetings. I've been helping out with a couple of my business partners with some real estate transactions. So, how I usually dress, look like I'm on the beach somewhere. So, had to change it up, and just wanted to dress up nice. That's all.
Good. It looks good on you.
I appreciate it. I've been getting a lot of compliments. So,
Yeah. No, cool. Isaac, where are you from?
Milton Keynes, UK.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And When did you start getting into Bitcoin?
Um, I, I must admit, I've been a skeptical and seen it for quite some time. So I just put away little bits and pieces. I've got about a Bitcoin, worth several Ethereums, just literally money I could afford to lose and just leave it for the long term for the kids, for the next 10, 15 years, etc.
Yeah.
Um, I wouldn't say I've piled into it because like you made a couple of good points between fear and doubt. I don't have fear, but I do have doubt. And I think it's just getting used. And I think that the thing for me is I'm coming from a traditional asset, sort of traditional. I believe in long-term stocks and real estate, etc. And then shifting mindset is quite challenging because in a way, Bitcoin is intangible. Like sometimes I ask myself, but if the whole world goes to pot, what value does it hold? Like, can you buy food with it? Can you do, you know what I mean? So part of my thinking, I think something, if you could help me with, is what outside of the limited supply, what other value does Bitcoin have, and do you see it continue to have in the future in terms of ongoing impact?
Let me ask you a question.
Hmm.
What? Why does gold have financial value?
Good question. I think fundamentally it's just because it's shiny, we like it, and for thousands of years we've all collectively agreed this has value. I think it's just a shine. Other than that, I can't think of any other reason.
Why you said you're in stocks, right? Why
Mm.
why do stocks have financial value?
Okay, fundamentally because the underlying companies produce something of value. They contribute something to the economy that has that has a value attached to it, and people buy that to get a piece of it. Now that's the first part. I say the second part also I think is money has to go somewhere. So people are thinking, okay, traditionally we think either real estate or stocks. So whether a stock is truly valued or overvalued, part of it is that money's got to go somewhere, unless you're going to put it in bonds, right? So I'd say because fundamentally a company has to have something of value that it produces, otherwise the stock wouldn't have much value.
And why does real estate have value?
I'd say two reasons. One is it is one of the key requirements of existence. Everyone needs somewhere to live. Two, population growth outstrips a building of homes. But the second, I'd say the third reason
Hold
why.
on.
Did you say
Why
what?
is that important? Why is that important? Why is population growth outstripping the supply of homes important?
Because supply and demand. If you've got more demand than there is supply, then it should lead to a price imbalance and further price appreciation. You know,
So therefore, what you're saying is the scarcity of real estate compared to the amount of population that needs it drives the price up, right?
partly. I think in the
Oh,
West,
sorry.
here in the UK, was driven it, and in Western Europe and the US is cheap borrowing. Cheap borrowing, especially since 2008, is what's really accelerated property, right? Um,
Well,
but I say fund, yeah, yeah,
in terms of cheap borrowing, the only reason cheap borrowing would drive up the price of real estate is that cheap money is looking for a scarce place to put it,
yes.
right? That you can have unlimited amount of money printing. So now I've got to take that energy from an unlimited amount of money printing and put it into a finite asset. So the point I'm trying to get to is all of the assets that you're currently in and that you think hold value have value because they're scarce. They
Mhm.
have the financial premium because they're scarce. We believe that gold has its financial premium because it's scarce. We don't think anyone can just go and dig gold out the ground, right? Truth is, you can.
Yes,
If you
yeah.
found a little bit of gold, you're adding to the gold supply. If I my parents are my dad's from Africa, my mom's from India, right? So it's like if they went home and they found some gold, they're like that's adding to the worldwide supply of those assets, and therefore overall that will trickle down, and the financial premium of that asset will go down if the demand doesn't increase to match that limited supply that they've discovered.
Mhm.
That is the value that money has. True money is not US dollars or pounds. Money is the underlying hard thing that you can hold. It is the scarcity that creates the financial premium on top of the asset. And us as human beings, we just have a weird tendency where just naturally, without anyone telling us, we always put our cash and our currency into the hardest asset. That's why real estate has the largest market cap out of all the assets we've spoken about, because it's the hardest asset. It's the hardest one to replicate. If you wanted to press a button and eradicate all real estate on earth and had to rebuild it again, it would take about 120 years to do that.
Hmm.
Right? So that's the number one highest market cap asset. The next one below that is the stock market, because it takes about 50-ish years, there's different ways to measure it, to rebuild all the companies that are in the stock market and make up the value. So the stock market is the next one that has the value. And then on top, and then the one after that is gold. Gold takes about, I don't know, 56 years, something like that, to build to redig all of the gold. This is what's known as stock to flow. It's
Okay.
the new flow. How long does it take the new flow to replace the on ground supply, the on ground stock? And Bitcoin has a finite supply and a specified flow. So at some point, it's going to run out of new flow coming in, and
Mm.
only the flow will turn into stock. That's when it becomes infinite. There is no more. No matter how much you try, you cannot just rebuild this. You cannot just regain some Bitcoin because there's a finite amount. So the point I'm trying to make is all financial value, all financial premium, all financial assets have value because they are scarce. The scarcity is the single most important part of money, and we've been hoodwinked into thinking that it has to have something else. We've been hoodwinked into thinking that money should be doing something else. I should be able to work. Let's say I'm working in a school and I'm a teacher. I should be able to work, teach those children, earn my money, and it hold its value for me into retirement. But I can't do that. I've got to go and become a fucking financial speculator in order to maintain the money I've worked hard to earn. And then I've got a
Mm.
95% chance of losing it. That's the issue that Bitcoin fixes.
Okay. The scarcity is quite important. Yeah, yeah. That's quite a lot to think about. The scarcity, yeah, you're right, because everything has value because it's scarce. And that's getting used to that, I think, is a key thing. But
Why do you think?
Isaac,
What you
yeah,
go on,
Isaac,
Chris?
it sounds like you just need to
yeah.
do a little. It sounds like you didn't do your 100 hours or 5 or 10,000 hours, or you just need to do a little bit more research, because once you really understand and do the research in Bitcoin, you you automatically it's something that you have conviction about once you understand it, once you get to a certain level of understanding. And then also, what British was saying, he's also got a video, talking about how real estate, you think that you're really gaining value in US dollar with your real estate, but really you're not. Even though it's inflated or showing that it's gone up in value in US dollar has gone down. How much British? 98%, 97%,
Mhm.
99%.
Yeah, the US dollar's basically collapsed 99% in the last
99%.
30 years.
Mhm.
So you're thinking that the value of your house is going up when it's really not. It's actually the US dollar going down in value. So,
Okay.
you know,
You know, the other thing that people I've just talked about the store of value part of it, right? What we
Mhm.
discussed, Isaac, is the store of value part of Bitcoin, which is the scarcity creates the financial premium.
Yes.
Now, let's talk about the use case of it. There is about $5 trillion a day that are traded in forex markets,
Mhm.
right? In order to do this, do you know how much money it takes for someone in? This is why El Salvador did it. El Salvador did it because if you want to send $100 from the US to El Salvador, it's going to cost you $20 to do that in service fees by Western Union. With Bitcoin, Bitcoin can replace that, which is what a company called Strike is doing right now. They're built on top of Bitcoin, something called Lightning, which is a layer 2 protocol on top of Bitcoin. And they use the Lightning Network to send money from one country to another. So, say if I'm in the United States and I want to send you some money, I want to send you $100. Strike allows me the ability for it to debit my JP Morgan Chase account in the United States, instantly convert it into Bitcoin from $100, There's a slight cost to doing that. It's pennies on the dollar. It then sends that Bitcoin to the UK and then converts the Bitcoin from Bitcoin back into pounds at the current exchange rate and debits and credits it into your Barclays account instantly. And
Mm.
that happens within seconds. That's a $5 trillion market eradicated. So now you've got that $5 trillion of stable value staying in Bitcoin for the use case of foreign exchange on a
I
daily
see.
basis. That's one use case. Then you've got the idea that shops and businesses can accept Bitcoin. So there are a lot of use cases on top of Bitcoin, but fundamentally, Bitcoin is the money, and the money doesn't have to have a cash flow attached to it.
Mhm. And then with Strike, is that a protocol or is that a what is Strike?
Strike is a company in the USA. It doesn't work in
Okay.
the UK yet, so I was just using an example. But Strike allows anyone to do foreign exchange with any other. Like, imagine what you have to do if you want to send me a bank transfer from the UK.
Mhm.
Imagine how many minutes that takes, right? If I want, it's even worse because the UK is actually pretty good at this. If I want to send a wire from my JP Morgan Chase account to the UK, I got to either go through three different verification processes or go into branch and sign documents in order to send a $10,000 wire, right? I can do that in seconds on Strike. But
Mm.
this is the point where I don't want people to get confused. The underlying asset is the thing that has the value. The Bitcoin is the thing that has the value. Strike is using a protocol called Lightning, which is on top of Bitcoin.
I
That's how the
see.
world works right now. The world, different central banks have a currency that they work with, right? They exchange that currency and they have their value exchanged based on that currency. Then, on top of that, there's debt. And then on top of that, there is pounds and dollars and things like that that we use. Bitcoin is the base layer. It's the SDRs of
Mhm.
central banking. I can then, so the most perfect way to deal with a multinational Bitcoin environment would be central banks adopt Bitcoin. They then use Lightning or alternatives, whatever might come up, on top of that to do daily transactions within the countries. Then at the end of the day, the central banks do one transaction each and send the Bitcoin over to whichever trade has happened on the day. That's the best way to do it. But Bitcoin's the underlying asset. This is the first time in human history that you, I, Chris, and everyone else get to own a piece of the underlying asset. It's like, let me ask you a question. If do you own tech stocks?
Mhm.
Right. Is
Yeah.
it better for you to own the tech stocks and take the risk on the tech stocks or own a piece of the internet if you could?
Own a piece of the internet.
That's what you have with Bitcoin. It's like
Mhm.
imagine if all of the property that was ever going to be built in human history had to be built in the land area of Mayfair, right? In London.
Mhm.
What would be better, to own the land, a piece of the land area, or to own a property?
A piece of the land area.
That's what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin is a land play, not a real estate play.
Okay, cool.
Because any opportunities, anything that will be built on top of Bitcoin will need your Bitcoin in order to build it, and that's why the value will continue to climb.
What about other coins? Are there other coins that could replace Bitcoin that might be more efficient, that might be cheaper, might be, I don't know, there's so many, or there's some uniqueness to Bitcoin that the other coins don't possess.
Bitcoin fixes the one problem that everyone has, which is store of value,
Okay.
based on the scarcity. The reason why these other coins don't work is, think about it like this. Let's say you buy an iPhone this year, right? Let's say you bought an iPhone 14 last year and the iPhone 15 comes out. Are you going to be able to get more money for your iPhone 14 when the 15 comes out or less?
Less.
Right. So when something is professing to be a utility and claiming that the value of it is going to go up, it's like a complete clusterfuck of a thought process. If it's a utility, the price of utilities over time should go down, right? So we might be paying right now, we might be paying because of inflation more dollars, but the actual value in an iPhone today is so much better than an iPhone when it first came out. But the inflation makes us think we're paying more for it, but we're not. The value of the iPhone today is much higher than it was back then, so the price is much better now. but we don't think about it like that.
Also,
So
that's like saying, let's make a new fire. There's only one fire. Let's make a new internet. There's only one internet. So it's decentralized. The Lindy effect as well. You know, you have to. I don't know if you know about the Lindy effect. It's 100% decentralized and it has first mover advantage. So you know, a lot of these things play into a part of it. And again, what British was saying, it's accessible to everybody on the planet, and the network effect is just so strong right now. Even if there is another Bitcoin, there is another Bitcoin. There's Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV and Bitcoin
What
Gold.
about like Ethereum and so on? Are they just,
Those are
do you hold?
centralized
Okay,
coins. So
the,
those are
I see.
controlled by other people,
Okay.
and that's actually the
Ethereum
downside.
had imagine if this happened, right? Let's say the anonymous founder of Bitcoin, right, decided to stick around, right? Decided to form a corporation and call it Bitcoin Foundation, and decided to mine before he released it, mine 70% of all the Bitcoin and keep it for himself. And then said, if you want to mine it, you can only do it in the jurisdictions that I tell you to do it in with the service providers that I tell you to do it with. And by the way, whenever I want to change the protocol and the release and the issuance of Bitcoin, me as a foundation manager, I can do it. Do you think that's trustworthy?
No.
That's what Ethereum is. Ethereum is pre-mined
Mm.
70% of the coins. There's one moron at the lead of it, and he can basically change the issuance protocol, which he has done, as and when he wants to. That's why
Mm.
Ethereum is a flaw, and Ethereum is the single most stupidest thing on earth. In fact, Ethereum, every single bull cycle, Ethereum has to come up with a new way to stay relevant. The last one was NFTs. And here's how NFTs work. They said, I have a picture of a monkey, and I want to
Mm.
sell you that picture of the monkey. And I'm going to sell it to you for $1 million worth of value. But in order for you to buy it, you need to go buy $1 million of Ethereum and send that Ethereum to me. So now they gave you the illusion that the Ethereum has the value. But unlike a normal art piece, let's say I have an art piece and I want to sell you that art piece in dollars, right? So I sell it to you for $1 million. Are you forced to sell Chris that art piece in dollars, or can you sell it to him in euros or pounds?
Euros, pounds, whatever. Yeah.
So what has the value? Is it the art piece that has the value, or is it the dollars that has the
It's the
value?
art piece. The art piece
Right.
has the value.
So with Ethereum, what's going on is all of these people put their JPEGs onto the network and made it look like Ethereum has the value. But it's actually the network and the community around the art that they've created that has the value. What happens if they say we're moving this community of these monkey collectors, right, to Bitcoin? What happens to the value of Ethereum? Collapses. That's the problem with Ethereum, and that's the problem with all these little utility tokens that are out there. It's never the token that has the value, it's what it's being used for, and that can be moved to anywhere in the world.
Mm. Yes. A final question, yeah. When during the pandemic, everything collapsed, and I've seen your videos on sort of the risk on, risk off assets and which moves in what order, etc. Um, the fact that Bitcoin went from whatever, before we saw the rally in the in the pandemic, we saw the collapse and then the rally. I would say the collapse was, to me, I guess, showed or one way of interpreting that is that people dumped everything and just wanted cash, right?
Yep. Yep.
Um, then made me think, well, then meant how much value does this thing have if people are willing to dump it during a crisis and just go straight to cash? One. Two, during a bull cycle, that would you say that was highly correlated with the interest rates being reduced, or do you think Bitcoin works independently of the interest rate cycle? So, is there a danger, for example, that as we've seen here, rates rising, it's kind of it hasn't collapsed massively, but it's been contained. Do you see, say, as rates going down, then Bitcoin rising, or do you think it's independent of that now?
Well, firstly, with the first part of
Mm.
the question, in a crisis moment, US dollars in this world that we live in right now will always have the most value because they're the
Okay.
most liquid. So people will always rush to US dollars first right now. The only time where Bitcoin will replace that for the entire world is when the US dollar collapses. right? That's not going to happen for a very long period of time. So there's always going to be price volatility on Bitcoin. Now, the second question, Bitcoin responds to liquidity cycles just like every other asset. Anyone who tells you that Bitcoin is a risk off asset, it just doesn't understand how it works. Bitcoin will only become a risk off asset once the US dollar collapses. Now, to you and me, it might be a risk off asset because we understand how the world works. But to the general, to the general consciousness of the world, Bitcoin is a risk on asset and will respond like a risk on asset to liquidity cycles. So it's not about interest rates. It's about how much money is being pumped into the system. Interest rates are a part of that. And we've just been through a tightening cycle for a year and a half, and we're about to go into an easing cycle.
Do you think easing cycles? Oh, sorry, maybe I should rephrase that. The extra pool of liquidity coming in then floats like when you were mapping out your the risk on risk off cycle, where risk on risk off assets and the order in which money flows. Say the last being tech stocks, and then after that being cryptos, Bitcoin. We should see that flow coming in because I definitely think once liquidity comes in, we'll hit another bullish cycle. So would you
Yes.
agree? Would you agree with that? Okay.
Yeah. So what will happen is exactly what's been happening, right? People came out of their cash or cash alternatives, which is what they were running to, and they started getting into corporate yield, then into the stocks, and then into slow. Real estate might be an interesting one. I said in that video that real estate might be skipped over because of how long interest rates stay high. And then it will move over it will go down, it will flow down. The beautiful thing is once they get to Bitcoin, Bitcoin's got a finite supply, unlike stocks. Anyone can create the unicorn companies can be created by how much venture capital money goes into them, right?
Yes.
So unicorn companies will always come and they will always go. Bitcoin, you can't do that. There is a finite supply. There are 21 million Bitcoin. There's 1.8 million Bitcoin on exchanges today, and that's it. And now BlackRock's coming for the rest of it. So it's like there
Mm.
will always be a finality of supply with Bitcoin that you don't get with tech stocks, with real estate, with everything else, which is why I moved, to start with, within the first 2 months of me discovering, getting my mind right on Bitcoin, I moved 30% of my net worth into Bitcoin. By the end of that year, 70% of my net worth into Bitcoin and got dumped all my gold. So understanding the finite supply of the asset is the single most important thing with Bitcoin. Understanding that it's a land play, not a real estate play. Understanding that it's like buying a piece of the internet, not buying a tech company building on the internet, is the most important part about Bitcoin.
Cool. Perfect. Your clarity is giving me much is much appreciated because it's answered a lot of questions and sort of kind of made some connections which I understand now. Thank you for
You're welcome. And by
for
the
the
way,
answers.
do you have kids?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so when just people always say, "Oh, Bitcoin's very volatile." I like to think about it like this: when something is young, it's going to have volatility, right? Like if you've got a young baby, they're going to have more volatility around little things that happen. If there's a loud noise,
Mhm.
they're going to get scared. As they get older, that loud noise happens. It's like, oh, I know what that is, right? So I don't need to get scared by it. That's how markets mature as well. Markets mature
Yes,
exactly
that
like
makes sense.
so.
That makes sense.
Like for example, China banned Bitcoin mining, and Bitcoin took a dump. Well, the next time, now that we've realized, wait a second, China banned this thing and Bitcoin's still fine, right? So next time someone says we're going to ban Bitcoin, do you think it's going to have the same effect as last time?
Mm-mm.
No. That's how a market
Mm.
matures. That's why volatility decreases over time as the market cap gets bigger because the asset
Yes,
gets older.
definitely.
In my
Because you can
opinion,
even see like, yeah, sorry. Mhm.
I don't think China banned Bitcoin. They just said that to scare everybody so they can buy more Bitcoin. That's my honest opinion. Which is a
Do you see a
smart
lot
play.
of the central, with the whole digital central assets coming out, central banks, will they be using Bitcoin? Would that be an integral part of bringing out central digital currencies?
I don't think central banks will like Bitcoin because there is finality on the asset.
Mm.
So they'll be using their own central bank digital currencies controlled centrally in order to navigate. Now, contrary to a lot of people, I think it's inevitable that CBDCs come around because everything evolves and it's time for cash and currency to evolve. And it's same thing as cars, right? They're trying to bring out electric cars and all this other shit. Cars have been around for a very long time. They have to evolve, whether it's synthetic fuels or electric cars, whatever, but they have to evolve. currency will also evolve. I think the most perfect setup for the entire world should be, in a world where this is inevitable, should be a wallet where you have USD in one wallet and Bitcoin in another wallet. Simple. It works for everyone around the world. You save in your Bitcoin, you spend in USD digital currency. That, I think, is the most likely outcome of what will happen.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Can you
I
imagine
love your
if
fundamentals video as well. The on the options,
You're
all
welcome.
that. Yeah. That
You're
was
welcome.
I like the eye opener on that. Very interesting. Yeah.
You're welcome. Chris, did you have anything else to say?
could you imagine if the CBDCs were ran on Lightning Network?
Listen, that would be, you're looking
That
at
would be
Bitcoin prices in the $20 million range.
that would be crazy.
Um,
But
right,
brother,
guys, listen, thank you very much for taking part. I'm going to end the stream now, so I'll
Cool.
catch you guys on the next one, okay? Isaac, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for the questions. And Chris, where do they get your book from? Again, remind them.
So you can pre-order it right now at Fiat Bitcoin Dad fiatdad.com. You can pay in Bitcoin, or you can pay in shitty fiat. So thanks, British. I
I'm going to
appreciate you.
go do that. I'm going to do that right now after the stream ends, okay?
All right, I appreciate you, and
Guys,
I'm gonna buy your book as well. Obviously, I don't know. Can I send your? How can I buy your book?
it's not live yet, but you'll be able to get it. Don't worry.
Okay, no problem.
All right?
Appreciate you. All right,
Guys, I'll see you on the next
Thank
stream.
you.
Isaac, thank
Thank
you
you
for
very
the questions, okay? Listen, everyone, at the end of the day, now is the time to get bullish as fuck again on Bitcoin. If you've been missing the sign, this is the sign. I wish it was nighttime because I'd figure out how to project the Bitcoin logo into the sky. You can't do that just yet, but just imagine it's there. BlackRock is the signal. At the end of the day, if you're thinking about it, you got assets, you need to understand why Bitcoin is extremely important, and this is part of it. Subscribe to the YouTube, get on the mailing list to get my book, etc., etc. And most importantly, regardless of anything I say, regardless of anything anyone else says, there's 3 rules of Bitcoin. You never ever have to talk to me ever again as long as you understand the 3 rules of Bitcoin. Step number 1, you buy Bitcoin. Step number 2, you shut the fuck up. And step number 3, you get fabulously wealthy.